Hello Flosstube, my name is Deb. I'm the Traveling Stocking Stitcher, and I'm very glad that you joined me today. Glad to have those of you who are returning. Fantastic to see you again, and those who are new, welcome. I'm glad to see you're here. Now, we're calling today's episode Stitch Me, I'm Irish, because it is March, and we're going to go with an Irish theme. I visited Ireland in 2016, and you know I like to stitch things of places I've been to remind me of those trips. And then I also recently discovered, my mom did a DNA test and found out that she was 4% Irish. Surprising, we thought we were mostly German. We actually found out we were a few other things too, but 4% Irish, I figure since I've got half of her DNA, that makes me at least 2% Irish, which I think is twice the legal limit to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. So I think I'm good this year. So we are going to have a St. Patrick's Day parade, a St. Patrick's Day WIP parade, because I have WIPs, more WIPs than I intended to have. I was going to do two things for this this month's episode, and I dilly-dallied and didn't order my fabric right away, and then 1-2-3 Stitch got hit in Texas with an ice storm, so the fabric I finally did choose came kind of late, and so I had to start stitching on some other stuff. So I've got 4 WIPs that I will show you that all have Irish themes, and couple of other things as well. So let's get started. Now, I usually, you know me, like to dress for the occasion. I did put a little green on here, but I assume that you probably were expecting me to be dressed like a leprechaun, sipping on a shamrock shake and sprinkling some Lucky Charms over the top, but just decided to wear my Irish sweater. I love my Irish sweater. Bought this in Ireland, and it's fantastic. My husband swears that we went to every sweater shop in Ireland, and he's not that wrong. But I kept looking in the women's section. They just had pullovers and stuff. I really wanted a cardigan, and this thing's fantastic. It's super warm. I live in Minnesota, and I wear this most of the time. If it's above 10 or 20 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm usually in this sweater, and I'm fine. So it's really fantastic. First up, we have A Lovely Day for a Ginness. This is a poster. I've done a previous poster, and I'll show you that in a minute. But this is one that I found on crossstitchtheworld.co.uk, same place I got my Hawaii vintage travel poster that I showed in my last video. But they have 2 Guinness posters out there. And if you've been to Ireland, and any pub has the Guinness toucan on it. It's everywhere. And so I just love these travel posters. So the toucans. Why toucans? The story behind it is the advertising agency wanted their in-house artist, John Gilroy, to create a series of posters of families drinking beer, like you did in the 1950s. Apparently, even up until the 1950s in Ireland, they would give mothers who'd just given birth Guinness because of the rich iron content in it. It was a different world back then. Their slogan used to be, Guinness is good for you. And so then they couldn't quite decide what this Guinness drinking family should look like. So one day Gilroy went to the circus with his son and saw this sea lion balancing a ball on his nose. And he thought, oh, what if I put a glass of Guinness on his beak or on his nose? And so he went on to do a series of different animals. He did elephants and pelicans and turtles and all sorts of stuff. And then around 1935, apparently he did the toucan, and which was one that really caught on. So this is Lovely Day for a Ginness. Here they are. There's 2 versions. I think the original is horizontal or landscape, and that one has 5 toucans on it in a V formation, and I kind of like the look of that. There's a horizontal or a portrait version of the poster as well, and it's missing one of the toucans over the side here. And I didn't think that looked quite right for a few different reasons. I mean, there's kind of in interior design and gardening, and they always tell you to have an odd number or something, whether it's planting peony plants or number of candlesticks you have on a table. It should be 3 or 5, not 4. And in China, in Asian countries, 4 actually is a symbol of bad luck. And I just wanted the V formation. You got these RAF pilots down here, and seeing a squadron of toucans flying overhead seemed more appropriate. So I figured I'd take this little guy over here, and I wanted him to be a little smaller and be able to still fit underneath this guy. So what I did is I took out 2 rows horizontally and 2 rows vertically out of this guy and put him over here off the tail feathers of that guy up there. So I now have 5 toucans flying in formation. This one's a WIP because I ran out of one color floss, so you see there's a few little holes here and there that I haven't filled in yet. One of the other things that I did is the lettering. I like the lettering from the other poster. This was kind of just stick letters on this one, but I wanted to, this one has a little bit, as you can see, it's got a little shading. There's a darker color on one side of the letter, a lighter color on the other side of the letter, and so I wanted that to match. And the original kind of was higher up here, and I was afraid it was going to be tall and skinny. They also had a border around the edge, which I didn't put on because I didn't want it to be tall and skinny. I was a little worried about running too far over the edge because I put the extra thing over here. I extended this down over here too to kind of match up the edge. But the other poster, I left the edge off because I had to, because I didn't have room. So to have them match, I put those together. So this is this guy, and this is the other one that I did. So I've got 2 Lovely Day for a Guinness posters that go together. You see, I started to do the edge here, and I realized I was not going to have room up top, and it was going to have these wide margins on the edge and not anything on the top or bottom. So I kind of quit halfway up, and that's why I left it up this one as well. So they both are. The other one I got from StormyXStitch on Etsy, and then crossstitchtheworld.co.uk has both of the posters. So that one took no time at all. It took like 3 days, 4 days, no, maybe 4 days, maybe 5, I don't know. I had put that extra toucan in, so. One more fun fact, I like to have fun facts. I did not know this, maybe you did. The Guinness Book of World Records was started by the Guinness people. Apparently there was an executive that had a hard time verifying a bet that he had going on what was the fastest game bird in Europe, and couldn't find it in any reference book. So he started up Guinness Book of World Records. As a marketing ploy, they gave away about 1,000 of the first edition of these things, and the Guinness Book of World Records is in the Guinness Book of World Records as the best-selling copyrighted book series of all time. So I guess if you create your own book, you can show up in it. So the next thing I did, and I've been looking at this one for a while, this is another vintage travel poster. It's a TWA poster. The artist is S. Greco, and I don't think it's L. Greco, it's S. Greco. And this is what it looks like, the original. And I have seen this on StormyXStitch on Etsy, and looked at it for a long time. It seems a little dark, but it's a travel poster, it's Ireland, and I mean, it looks kind of cool. It's got this kind of old world feel to it. And so I thought, well, the other thing took me no time at all. Other fabric hadn't arrived yet. I got to stitch on something. So I got this, and what I decided to do, I had some dark green 16 count Aida that I had sitting around. And I thought, well, this is perfect. I don't want to do a full coverage. This is pretty much a full coverage piece. I did not want to do that. So I thought I can get away with a lot of the sky using just a green fabric kind of thing. And 16 count was going to fit fine, so it was perfect. So I got kind of a slow start because my other stuff came in, so I kind of abandoned this. Was not my first choice of things to do. But I think I will pick this up. But here's what I've got so far. Put something behind here to make it a little darker. That's what I've got so far. I've got the A of TWA, I've got the tail of the horse there, and then I've got the start of this Celtic cross. And this Celtic cross drove me right into the arms of Pattern Keeper. I'd never really thought that Pattern Keeper was, going to be very advantageous to me. I really don't enjoy doing full coverage stuff, but somehow, doing stuff like this, I've sort of backed into some heavy confetti sections, not like whole full pieces, but places where there's a lot of confetti. And so this one, you can see, there's every shade of beige and taupe that DMC manufactures in this thing here. And even keeping track of a piece of paper, I was totally lost because you couldn't get any reference points. And this takes up predominant portion of the thing. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to give Pattern Keeper a try. Turns out I love it, like everybody says. It's fantastic. You know, I thought, you know, clicking off all those things was going to take a bunch of time. It's fast doing that. I might just do a whole Flosstube episode about it, because people think, you know, if you're not a full coverage person, you may not need it. But it's fun. I love it. Just love it. So once my fabric came in, I was ready to start on the other things that I was working on. And again, like to do travel posters, want to keep them in an 11 by 14 size. Have found some designs that aren't that size, so I thought, well, I'll do some mashups. I'll put some things together. So the first thing I thought of doing is, well, I have this design, and this very much, it's called Poppyfield Lane. It's the Lane series from Derwentwater Designs. It's designed by Rose Swalwell, and I know this is supposed to be an English town, but it looks very much like many, many of the Irish towns that we visited. The town of Eire, for instance, very similar to thatch roofed huts, a little church like this. I'll throw in some pictures. It gives you an idea of what this looks like. So I wanted to do this, but this one's only 13.5 by 5.5, so that's not going to fit on a 14-inch. So I sized it down a little bit so it'll fit across on an 11-inch frame. But then I needed to put something else above it. So went to Peppermint Purple, and they do Blackwork stuff, and they have a bunch of different countries and states that they have maps of. And I've been wanting to do a little more Blackwork. I've done just a little smidge of it and enjoyed it, so I wanted to do that. So the fabric that I chose that finally came in is 18 count Jade, and it's look at my notes here, from Picture This Plus. And then I use classic green sulky 12 weight and anchor black for the outside. So here is what I did. I offset it a little bit because I wanted to, over here, we did what's called the Wild Atlantic Way. It's kind of going down the west coast here. I think you're supposed to start way up here, but we started over here. And first place, kind of give you a little rundown and show you some pictures of the different places. What I'll do is I'll put beads on the map corresponding to where the things are. Luckily they're all near the coast, so they'll be close by. We went to Connemara, which has mountains and bogs and heathlands and lakes, so it's just a real wild country. And then we have Kylemore Abbey, just like this. It's a Benedictine monastery founded in 1920s on the grounds of Kylemore Castle, and by some Belgian nuns who fled World War I. And there's also this beautiful Victorian walled garden on site. If you're interested in, if you've been to Kylemore Abbey and you like doing full coverage, I found a version of this called Sunrays Creations. I'll link it down below. But it's got a beautiful version of that. And they actually have a ton of Irish scenes that are, again, more full coverage than I'm going to do. But if you like that kind of thing. Then we have Ross Eirely Friary, and this is a Franciscan monastery that dates from around 1460. It's a national monument, and it's the best preserved medieval monastic site in the country. Next one I'm not going to be able to pronounce, but it's Ognanur Castle, and it is a 16th century tower house near Galway. We walked around there. We were the only ones on the place, so it was kind of cool. And we went to visit the Cliffs of Moher. Artecy has a beautiful full coverage thing again, if you're going to do that, and also Sunrays Creations that I just mentioned. I believe they also have a very photorealistic Cliffs of Moher. You probably have seen this before. It's a natural rock formation, just gorgeous sheer drops. Bunratty Castle is a tower castle from the 15th century tower house near Shannon. And I mentioned Eire, the town that we put below, had a lot of thatched roof cottages, those kinds of things. And there's the Dingle Peninsula, and we took a bus tour around that. Again, beautiful. They have these beehive rock formations, all kinds of beautiful scenery and coastlines and that kind of thing. while we were there, it was kind of cool. They were filming Star Wars 7, The Force Awakens. And it's the one, this is a spoiler alert for you if you haven't caught up yet. At the end, the island that Luke Skywalker is on and Rey gives him the lightsaber, Mark Hamill might have been hanging around Ireland the same time we were there, because we could see the trailers and stuff parked up on the ridge along the coastline just off the coast of the island, and we saw like helicopters and things that were covered over with tarps that might have been like secret Star Wars stuff that they didn't want anybody to see, and so it was kind of cool that was going on there. Even the stores, some of their stores in Dingle had little displays about welcome to the Star Wars crew and things like that. Then we went to Killarney National Park, and this is a 25,000 acre national park, the first national park of Ireland. There's this Victorian house, the Muckross house, that we visited, and then they have these gardens, these beautiful gardens, and they have these enormous rhododendron plants that unfortunately are invasive, and these exotic species have been introduced and are taking things over. As you can see, these things are 3 times as tall as me, and they're huge. They're massively wide, and they're all over the place. They're just giant rhododendron plants. Beautiful. They were in bloom and everything while we were there, but they're taken over. We did Ring of Kerry. It's right here. And it's a 111 scenic mile drive. We took a bus tour around so that we could actually see things and not worry about driving off the edge. There weren't a lot of edge things, but just, driving on the wrong side of the road and that kind of stuff. And then finally we have Kinsale down here. And this is a lovely little town. Beautiful, colored, painted houses. They have the 12th century town, and they also have one of the finest examples of a 7th century star-shaped fort, Fort Charles. So yeah, just had a lovely stay down there in Kinsale. And so that's kind of our little trip around Ireland. And here then is my Poppyfield Lane. Now, when I started this, I was a little dismayed, because the first thing I started stitching was some of the blue and a little bit of the greens here, and then this pink. This house here, I wasn't expecting that to be pink. I guess if I had looked closer, but it seems very, very pink. And it's looking very baby nursery color thing going on here, which next to that dark green has got me a little unnerved. I think if I do a little bit more, it might be okay. I mean, I think the color against this is almost kind of a pastel-y green, and I think alone it would look okay. I think it's just being jarring right now because that's all I've done is the pink is predominant, so I think it'll get better. We'll see. Next up we have Irish Sampler. This was designed by Kathy Berlew. It was in a magazine. I'm not really sure. I bought it on eBay, and it was kind of cut out, and they covered up the name of the magazine, so I don't know what it was. But I saw it on Leah Noel's Rhubarb Patch Studio Flosstube, and immediately ran over to eBay and searched for it and found it. And it's a fairly small piece, and again, it wasn't going to fit on a 14 by 11 inch because it was shorter and narrower than I wanted to do. So I was going to have to create a framework to go around the outside of it. So I kind of looked through the internet and Pinterest and kind of got some inspiration for what an Irish kind of border would look like, and some Irish knots and stuff, and envisioned that I would put this frame around it with Irish or Celtic knots around the border. And it took a little pencil whipping to do the math and get it right, but I got a little bit lucky where they kind of worked out width and lengthwise, and it wasn't too bad. I could find, I could pick the number of multiples of Celtic knots I could do and make the math work, so mostly worked out. Alright, so here is the Irish Sampler, and so you can see this along here is just the original design, and I built this framework around the outside, and then I will put these Celtic knots in here and fill that all out. So that will fit nicely in there. Still got a few more things. I'm missing some floss over here that I'm going to need to finish up. This part's pretty much all done. Kind of screwed up a little bit on the sheep. If you can see real close, you have to look real close. I didn't realize till the next day when I was in daylight. These two guys are ecru. This guy's white, but I actually think I don't mind it because over here where we've got the sweater design also is a mix of white and ecru by design, so they kind of fit in because sheep are all kinds of different colors. case in point. Sheep I saw in Ireland. I didn't put the little, they spray paint their butts so you know that they belong, who they belong to, so I didn't do that. So there it is. Then I found this lettering called Celtic Alphabet from Cross Stitch Kits Awa on Etsy to spell out Ireland. I don't have the D done yet, but it was all lowercase. And I did do a few changes because one of the greens that were in the lettering, just seemed a little too much jewel tone. This is 3812 and I used 3818, which is some of the colors in here, because I just thought this was going to be too far off of things. And I also switched, what else did I switch? Oh, the red. I switched from 666 to 321 in the reds. Now there isn't any red up above here, so I was a little concerned with maybe this was not going to match real well. But the yellow, I did put yellow in the door and around the windows. And the reason I did this is a beautiful thatched cottage that we saw on our trip, and I wanted that to match there. Following Leah Noel's lead, I also did the satin stitch. On that I used the Gentle Art Dark Chocolate 1170 and did satin stitches, even though it didn't call for that in the pattern. I think it looks better. I might try to they do this little scroll work thing on the tops of thatch roofs. I may try to kind of recreate a little bit of that as well. I also dropped it down the sides. Normally it went straight across. So, and then, like I say, the Celtic knots, I did some examples here. This is the full one. I used the purple that's down in the letters down here, along with, gold and one of the greens that's over here. To try it out with just the gold is one option there. I think I like it better filled in. And then there's one over here with just not the purple, but just the gold and the green. I tried backstitching this one over here. I think I'm going to go with this one. The backstitching really wasn't helping too much. I could do maybe the purple all around behind. I don't know. But right now those are my three options. I didn't want to stitch in the purple behind because that's going to leave holes and things. So one other thing I want to mention about this. It is on 36 count, 2/2, and it's Winter Moon Edinburgh Linen by Zweigert. So I figured linen would be an appropriate thing for an Irish design. Up here, I experimented a little bit. The half stitches were charted kind of weird. Normally they give them half stitches their own, maybe their own symbol. And in this case, they had in the same square, they had one up here and one down there. I think that meant you were supposed to do just a slash, but I thought there were one little slash and then the other little slash on the other half of the leg. And so I got a little crazy on this one, and then that seemed a little nuts. Took a lot of work. And then I kind of went freeform on that. This one I did full 1/1 X's on a diagonal, and then this was a little bit different. I just did the one square of that. Here I did this a little bit differently, where I did one leg one direction, one leg the other direction of different colors. So I messed around a little bit with that one. And then the final thing I want to talk about on this here is this over here. This just called for a regular, DMC white and beige. Well, it really was not showing up. Partially my choice of linen. I think they used maybe a darker, kind of a brownish grayish linen. But because it was more or less ecru, it was not showing up. And so I made the decision I thought about using Whisper. Same thing with the sheep. But I hate working with Whisper. It's terrible. So I had some Pearl Cotton 5 that I had sitting around. I had ecru and white both. And so I started using that. And I really like how that gives the appearance of a sweater design. And it's kind of chunky, and it's, I was very happy it showed up a little bit better. It's subtle, but it's still, you can see the difference between the two. But the problem I had is because I'm working with linen, and it's got schlubs, and because it's big, fat, chunky Pearl Cotton, I had a really hard time getting it in the right holes. And then I was working here where, you see, I had to do this line down here that didn't have any reference points. It was just straight down here. And I got down to the end, and you can see I'm off a half, just one half. Because it's 2/2, I'm off. Same thing happened up here. I'm not redoing it, but eventually I got off one half, and I have no idea how I did it. I was being very, very careful. And I got so frustrated with it that I finally said, how can I fix this? What can make it better? So here's a life hack. If you're ever on linen, and it's like 36 linen, count linen, with using 5 pearl cotton, probably will never happen to you in your life. But if it does happen to you, what I just did is I took a single strand of DMC and just did the stitches, one leg of the stitches down here. And then I will just go back and fill it in. And that took the stress out of it. And you won't see those individual stitches because I already put some up above and you can't see them. So that's going to make a big deal. Plus you're putting big holes in things, so you don't want to, and frogging it is terrible. This may occur if you're making sheep. Now sheep, your choices usually are whisper or French knots. Neither of those are popular for most people, but pearl cotton will get you there. Now I didn't have as much trouble. I didn't have to use the guide things with the sheep because they were just like one big area of a big ball of stuff, and you were off a little bit. Sheep are a little messy anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So by design, they're fine. One other Irish option that I purchased, again, when I was worried about having, what if the fabric shows up and I don't like the fabric or it's not going to work out well. So I had one other option that I purchased from Etsy. It's Eire band from WaltonValeDesigns on Etsy. I thought this was really cool. So I may stitch this in the future sometime. So my seal of approval. I am going to go with Eire the Irish Stitcher. Not that she does a lot of Irish stuff, but she's Irish. She's got a lovely Irish lilt, and I like the stuff that I've seen her stitch. So I recommend you give her a try as part of the Irish theme here. I think Eire is an excellent choice, and Eire the Irish Stitcher, fun to watch. So I announced a giveaway in episode 13 and did not hear from the winner. So I'm going to have to redraw again. So I've got the random comment picker here ready to go. Pushing the button. Here we go. Whoops. So our winner is Clay Ottmeyer. Clay is going to be working on Hummingbird Stocking Cross Stitch Afghan. So good job, Clay. What you need to do is my email address is in the description below, so please send me an email with your information and we'll get that off to you. And I do have a thank you. Memphis Sarah E. Just mentioned me on her latest Flosstube. She is working on one of the heirloom stocking designs for her grandson and was working on part of it, and they can be a little challenging. And so she and I messaged back and forth about some tips about how she might want to approach that kind of thing. So she was nice enough to mention me in her last Flosstube and suggested people come this way. So Sarah, thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate you so much. Thanks. Thanks for coming along on this trip to Ireland with me. It was fun reliving it, and I was glad to have you along with me. You can find me on Instagram. It is traveling_stocking_stitcher. The Traveling Stocking Stitcher didn't fit all the way on Instagram. 1 L in traveling. I know in other parts of the world they spell it with 2 L's, but here in the US we spell it with 1. And I'm so glad to have you with. For those of you who have subscribed, I really appreciate it. We've had a lot of subscribers, and so that's great. Would like to welcome you, if you haven't done that already, to subscribe, to like, turn on notifications, tell your friends, whatever. So thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again. Bye.